Suppose you have two qualitative variables or categorical variables that are arranged in a contingency table, and you want to study these side by side. This could also work if one of these is a quantitative variable, for example, if you have age groups. But I'm assuming that you've already done the grouping and arranged this as a contingency table. Now, I'm going to use Stapplet.com, one categorical variable, multiple groups. This requires us to fill in a similar contingency table, and I'll let you know you may not always want to copy it in exactly the way you see it. For example, here I have groups and categories. Another way that I think would maybe make more sense to label this would be groups and responses. We want the response variable to be on this left side in these categories. And in my opinion, in this spreadsheet, the view of the economy as either being better, the same, or worse, that is the response. And the political affiliation, in this case, would be the group. So we would want to see if, by changing and looking at a different political affiliation, we see any change in those opinions. So again, we kind of use the idea of a response variable on the left side and an explanatory variable across the top. So I will be doing a little bit of transposing here, which is where rows become columns. I'll start with the Republicans, and we have better, same, and worse that we're going to want to go down the left side. I will use a plus to add a response here. You can also use a plus to add or remove a group. In this case, we only have, 3 groups, Republican, Democrat, and none. And it can be helpful to have a preliminary total, because what I try to do usually is put it from the largest group to the smallest group, similar to how we would graph it with a Pareto chart. So if I just highlight in Google Sheets, I can see that sum, 186, 236, 229. Actually, the Democrats, that is the largest group. If you wanted to do it like a Pareto chart, I would recommend putting that first. But just for keeping things simple on this pass through, I'm going to keep these in the order I see them. So for the Republicans, I have 38 who thought the economy got better, 104 said the same, and 44 said worse. Now that row became a column, and we'll do the same for the other two. Once I have all the information entered into that Stapplet, one categorical variable, multiple groups, contingency table, you can add a variable name here. To me, it helps to look at where it's going to put the variable name. In this case, they kind of put it in a weird spot, and there's no way to change this label below the graph. So what I usually do is for variable name, say economic views, or in whatever the label would be to label the responses. You might say by political affiliation or something to relate response back to explanatory variable. We'll usually do like a Y versus X or response by explanatory arrangement, focusing first on the output variable or the one that we really are studying here. The default is a segmented bar graph that only shows us that relative frequency. There's my new title, and it actually chopped off the end. So I'm going to just delete this back. This is one of the big limitations of Stapplet. We don't have a lot that we can do to label them. So as I said, this is relative frequency. We can't change that. This graph is only going to be good to compare proportional side-by-side amounts. So we can see that the Democrats are a bigger portion, or those who said worse in orange is a bigger portion of the Democrats than it is for other groups. And then the people that said better was the smallest proportion was within the Democrats. But we can't actually compare which of these groups is biggest with this comparison. We would need one of the other two. Mosaic shows us now across the top with a width what percent of the total we're looking at in that group. So 23.7% here for Republicans. That's, no, actually that couldn't be right. We must have to look down here. To figure out Republicans, we would need 186 divided by 651. And then we could figure out actually what percent that is. It looks a little under 30. But at least we could see here the Democrats is the biggest group, then none, then Republican. Personally, my favorite would be the side-by-side bar graph using frequency. We don't get to use the percentages, but that's okay if we include this outputting contingency table. That's going to really help us compare within each group. Here I have the percentage of Republicans who said the same. So we have all these conditional probabilities in here. And then marginal probabilities just for the responses. So I could see a baseline of 10.9% thinking it's better, but a percentage that's almost double that in the Republicans. Then I can go over here to look at that visually. Again, there's no percentages, but we can see that Democrats, by and large, felt the economy was getting worse. Republicans said the same. Nobody really was overwhelmingly saying that it was getting better. And maybe a combination of a segmented bar graph and a side-by-side bar graph could be really helpful to show both the proportional comparisons within the groups to hear the overall way the numbers stack up. I have counts here that I could convert pretty close back to these original numbers, maybe with estimations in this case, but at least I could do a lot better than here where I don't really have any information about how big these groups are.